Hello, welcome to Kim's Cozy Corner. I am Kim, and we are going to do a July garden tour. It's mid-July, and it is time for me to do a full tour of my garden. And so I am going to share with you all of the areas of my garden, as well as some changes that have happened here at Kim's Cozy Corner. Now, there's some good things and there's some bad things. There's quite a few bad things, right? There's quite a few things that don't look too good because of this unusual weather we've been having. But we're going to look at it all anyway so you can see everything that's going on. Now, I almost did a harvest first, but then I'm like, no. I want you to see the garden prior to me harvesting some of these items so you can see just how well some things are doing, and some things have bounced back and some things have just called it quits for the year. So let's just jump to it. And I think we're going to start around the side of the house and the front of the house so we can see how this weather has just really dried up everything, and then the things that are doing well. So let's go there. So we are heading over to the side of the house, and the side of the house, I do have a few vegetables growing over there, and it's just a few, but I want to show you some things that are going that look really nice, some things that are past the prime, but just in general, this is just what's going on at Kim's Cozy Corner. Now, I haven't showed you the front since we did all of the remodeling, putting in the sidewalk and the mulch and everything, but you can see here, I need the water. Look at that. That's all died back. It's dry as a bone in there, but we will get it some water a little later today. But all of these coleus I planted, started them from seed. Look how pretty they are, so pretty. They're two really big coleus. Look how big they are, y'all. I mean, these things are massive and they need water. They need a lot of water. And so these were a mixed bag of coleus. So some of them are pink, some of them are burgundy. There's some red over there. That container there is so dry, it was already turned over, but I put some zinnias in that pot there just because I had nothing else to go in it. But the coleus are doing really well. This will bounce back once I give it some water. It's been so hot that the hostas are just brown, but you really can't see it too bad. All of the flowers have already died off of the hostas. This is kind of what they looked like before they dried up. Some petunias that are very dry, but the petunias and the hostas are the only things that I brought around to the front of the yard. And again, most of the grass have grown back in, but there's still a lot of bare spots in the grass. But over to the side here, this is what I wanted to look at. So these flowers right here, they're past their prime, very past their prime. But here's a picture of it. I just happened to be out here one day with my cell phone and I took a picture, and look how pretty they were prior to them being past their prime. Moving on around, the strawberries are not producing right now. I mean, it's just been so hot. I haven't had hardly any blooms. I've been getting 2 or 3 strawberries a week. I'm hoping it'll cool down just a little bit so I can start enjoying a few more strawberries. Over here, I do have more potatoes, and yes, I said more potatoes. I grow lots and lots of potatoes. These potatoes actually need to be watered. We've had rain for the last few days back to back, but no rain today, and it's nice and dry, and you can tell by the potatoes they need some water. These potatoes will probably be ready to harvest in the next 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And y'all look at this bush back here. It's a really dark bush and it's flowering for the first time ever in the, what, 15 years that it's been here. It's finally decided to flower. It's a really beautiful dark bush. But that's the side of the house. We will move on around. Oh, there's a few more pots right there of potatoes. And these potatoes don't have supports in them. And I usually support my potatoes, but no supports. So you see they're laying all over the ground. But that's the side garden. How small it is, but it's still my side garden. Just here as we're entering the back part of the yard, this is where I have all of my sweet potatoes. You can't even see the containers anymore. Those sweet potatoes have just taken over. There are two 25-gallon grow bags right here. And then there is a huge Vego garden metal raised bed. I think there's, I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 20. I don't remember how many sweet potato slips I put in the metal raised bed, but they fully covered that metal raised bed. And I spend no time worrying about my sweet potatoes throughout the year. There's my one and only blueberry bush that's putting anything on it. And I've been coming out every day enjoying a blueberry or two. Now I know this bush doesn't look the best, but I thought I saw a ripe one. I did. There's my one ripe blueberry, but it's like my fifth or sixth one today. That's good. Next to the blueberries, I do have a few more petunias. And if I don't water these things every day, they completely wilt and they look horrible. And I watered them this morning, but you can't tell it. They're starting to look really bad for the season. This is one of my 13 green stalks. And now I've letting them get away from me, some of them anyway. In the top of this green stalk, I have basil. And I have already dehydrated some basil, I think 3 times already this year. It needs to be dehydrated. I need to pick more basil again. There's a celery right there, and it's looking good. And I recently planted some lettuce in here. So there's a lettuce, there's some lettuce down there. Trying to keep that lettuce harvest going. There's some more right there. Some down there. Some of the lettuce has gone to seed, like that one there. This one here, so I need to pull those out and get some more going. In the very bottom, I had cilantro and it's completely gone. For those of you who don't know, coriander are cilantro seeds. And so what I have right here now is coriander. These little round balls, that's coriander. And I could harvest it, but I already have plenty in the house. Or I could take this coriander and plant that next year for my cilantro. Just above the cilantro is parsley. Quite a bit of parsley. There's some of my young lettuce seedlings coming in pretty good. But there's one of 13 green stalks. We're going to go around this way today. This is my Vego garden self-watering tomato planter. And I have a tomato plant in there and they're looking good. And y'all, I harvested, I know 5 or 6 tomatoes off of here yesterday. And I'm looking at more and more tomatoes need to be harvested off of here. I also planted some additional, see the little seedlings coming up there? Those are cucumbers, more silver slicer cucumbers that I'm growing together with this tomato plant. There's a pepper plant growing in one of my herb planters from Vego Garden as well. And this thing is covered in peppers. And there's 2 that I need to pick now. Nice and orange. Those are called yummies. And there's a ton of them on there. Here's a dead tomato plant. I need to replace that one, but I'm showing you the good and the bad. I have spearmint growing here in this herb planter. It's self-watering as well. And the spearmint's doing really, really well. Next to it, I had some marjoram growing, but doesn't look too hot and it's super dry. I haven't been watering, y'all. I got to get on it. I just assumed the rain did it for me. These are my yellow wax beans and my purple beans. And this planter has been going since, I believe, April, and it's July. And I just harvested off of here just yesterday. And I mean, is there some browning of the leaves? Yes, there's a little bit of browning of the leaves, but these things are still producing like crazy. I mean, like really producing. I have some fresh green leaves coming on. So the more you harvest your beans, the more beans you will get. So I have tons and tons of wax beans and purple beans this year. There's another wax bean. And again, I just harvested yesterday, so there's not going to be that many on here. But I just want to show you a purple bean that's not in the shade. There's some purple beans there. The purple beans do turn green when you cook them. This GreenStalk right here, so we are now on GreenStalk number 3. This GreenStalk is full of collards. And these collards have been in place as well since April. And some of these were transplants. Some of these I started from seeds. It looks like we're getting a few worms in here now. I have to bring my daughter out here to take care of these worms. But I'm harvesting this planter probably once every 10 to 14 days. We just picked collards on here less than a week ago, and there's a worm. Oh my goodness, my daughter's got to get out here. The worms can't have my collard greens. All right, so that's everything on the patio. We're going to head over to my neighbor's because I do manage my neighbor's garden as well. And when I said I'm doing a full garden tour, I mean everything that I manage. And again, even at my neighbor's, some things are good, some things are not doing quite as good. So this is GreenStalk number 4. And I have some of the original lettuce from way back in March still in here, y'all. That's just how far behind I am. I need to get that lettuce taken care of. But I've gone ahead and I've added more kale to this GreenStalk. So there's some of the fresh kale that I've put in here. I have empty pockets that I need to fill up with something. We've added a pepper plant. So here's a pepper plant. There are little peppers on this plant here. The bugs are really eating up all of the brassicas in here. So we're going to have to get ahead of these bugs. There's a new head of lettuce that we've started there. So we're getting back on track. We'll get to it. Probably this weekend, we'll be able to get some more things done in this GreenStalk. Moving on over to the next GreenStalk. The tomato plants up high here, they've seen better days, but they've been harvesting tons and tons of patio choice yellow cherry tomatoes, tons and tons of them. They also have some parsley in here. At the bottom down here, there's one eggplant. I see a bloom on that eggplant. There's some pepper plants in there. More parsley. There's some oregano in there as well. And a lot of things in here that I need to get cleaned up. I just haven't got to it, but we will eventually get to it. There are some dwarf tomatoes growing in here as well. So there's one right there. That plant actually looks really healthy. And there's some more over here. I'm trying to stay in the light for you so you can see it. There were some beans growing in here, and they were bush beans. And so these bush beans are finished. I need to pull them out, and I'll probably put some more yellow wax beans in there for my neighbor. On this trellis way back here, I had winter squash growing, and between the cucumber beetles and the squash vine borers, they have just pretty much decimated my winter squash plant. Now, I was able to pull off one of my Australian butter squash. And here's a picture of what the Australian butter squash looks like, or supposed to look like. And I came out here one day and I'm talking to the neighbor and I'm just like, yeah, we've had some issues with, the cucumber beetles and things. And I looked over and my squash was gone. I flipped out. I thought the squirrels or something had got the squash, and I found out that my neighbor had harvested the squash, and she thought it was ready because it was this really bright yellow color, not orange, but bright yellow, and she thought it was ready. She didn't realize that it was a winter squash, and we needed to wait for the vines to right where it connects to the squash to harden, and for the skin to get so hard that you couldn't even put your fingernail in it. So she picked it too early. We have it indoors. Hopefully it'll continue ripening and it'll be okay. But the kabocha or something like that is still out here. Even though the vine's dying back, they may make it. And there's about 4 of those on there. Let me show you. There's some pretty nice size ones on there. There's a really big one down there as well. Just behind the squash, guess what? More potatoes. So Nicola potatoes, and they're already yellowing and they're starting to die back. And so maybe one more week, maybe, there's a potato not covered up. We got to cover that up. There. Now it's covered up. We can't have potatoes above the ground. In front of the potatoes are beans. Now, I had rabbits eat these beans all the way back to there was nothing. But now we have blooms. These are dragon tongue beans. Here's a dragon tongue bean that's beyond its life. Some people use dragon tongue beans and just eat the seeds that are inside, but I bet my neighbor doesn't even know there are beans on here. I will have to let him know that he needs to check on his beans. I have another bed of beans right here. Again, these are replantings. So when the squirrels came and decimated everything, I replanted beans. I put some fencing up to keep the rabbits out. And these beans are doing amazing. There are blooms on there. There are also little bitty beans on there. So we will have beans really soon. And these are all green beans, I believe. Now these are Vego garden metal raised beds as well. I have links below for all of my GreenStalks as well as the Vego garden products. If you're interested, you can click on the link in the description below. In this bed here, we have peppers growing on the back side here. They're blooming and they're little bitty peppers on there. They were kind of late to the party this year. In the middle here, oh my goodness, y'all, that is all celery. Way too much. All this celery. I have no desire to eat all this celery, but the neighbors are doing a good job taking care of it. In the front of this bed, I have onions, and some of these need to come out. Like that onion right there, it has nothing left. The top's completely died off on that one. This one as well. The neck is all bent over. I need to pull those out. But some of these are still going strong. Nice strong necks on them, still standing upright. So these, some of these anyway, onions still have a ways to go. Not much going on in this bed. It's mostly just flowers and lettuce that's way past its prime. I need to pull this lettuce up in both of these beds. I have onion growing around the outside of this bed. Some of them are nice sized onion too, and some of them aren't, but nice sized onion on the outside of this bed. These tomato plants have completely just died away from lack of water. I don't have enough drip irrigation in this bed for one. And without enough drip irrigation in this bed, as hot as it's been, these tomatoes just don't look very good. But there are tomatoes on there. Some of them are being harvested, but I believe these things are just diseased and they're just pretty much done. But we will make sure we get those tomatoes off of there. Before I get too far ahead, behind these beans right here, just behind them, we have cucumbers growing. And with the cucumbers, we did have those cucumber beetles causing us some issues back here, but some of the plants are still doing really, really well. There's some cucumbers. These are some of my bigger cucumbers. These are my Japanese cucumbers. This is another one of those beds where it's just being decimated with the squash vine borers. So with the squash vine borers, if you look here, the stem is completely eaten out. If I was to cut that stem back, there would be worms in that stem, and that's what killed that plant. But we were able to get a ton of these green scallop squash prior to this plant giving out on me. In the back of this bed, I also have cucumbers, and there are cucumbers in here. And I recently just planted more cucumbers to make up the difference when these start to completely die away. We want to keep that harvest coming. This is the second time I've planted this bed, and these are turnip greens. And I've harvested this bed twice. I'm going to harvest again this weekend, but every time I get over here, they just die back so quickly. And this time I didn't overplant it. The first time I planted everything too close together, and they just kind of died off without really giving me anything. But this time I got it just right, but it's just been so hot. But we will harvest that this weekend. The tomatoes over here are doing well. We've been harvesting tomatoes over here, or I should say my neighbor has. When it comes to the tomatoes, I don't get the weights on the tomato plants over here. This is strictly for my neighbor. This is the bed I gave pretty much to the rabbits to just have at it. If they want it, eat it. And basically they've eaten all the cabbage and the broccoli out of this bed here. The bed right next to me here, I did have beans in here. The rabbits ate all the beans. I came back and planted kohlrabi. The rabbits done ate all 8 of the kohlrabi, but the rabbits didn't touch any of the collard greens or the tomatoes, but kohlrabi, cabbage, broccoli, green beans. That's what the rabbit prefers. These are all paste tomatoes over here, different varieties of paste tomatoes. There's a pretty big one. That's an Italian heirloom. Pink oxheart, Korean long, and that's probably a big mama down there on the end. These are all orange and yellow tomatoes, and they are farther behind than the rest of them, but there are still tomatoes on here. This is another one of those beds that I just gave to the rabbits. If they want it, they can have it. There's cabbage in here. There's cauliflower in here, and it looks like they didn't care too much for the cauliflower, and they didn't care too much for the purple cabbage. But all of the broccoli has been gone forever out of this bed. Now, y'all, let's talk about this bed right here. This is the back side of my tomato bed here. And the only thing that I put in this bed here are peppers, tomatoes, and eggplant. But I had a random seedling that sprouted, and that seedling has taken over this whole bed. And y'all, that seedling, guess what, was a cucumber. And this cucumber, honestly, has done better than all the cucumbers in my garden. Let me show you. There it is. That's a suyo long cucumber, which I'm not even growing this year. So that seed came from last year somehow or another, and it germinated and took over this bed. There's a teeny little eggplant. And these eggplants were completely decimated by, I think they're called flea beetles. Let me show you one. You see those little bitty bugs on this leaf right here, those little black spots? Those little bugs ate these eggplants down to the ground. There was nothing left. But now they're starting to come back and they're getting large and healthy again. And so I'm just letting them grow. And no, I didn't grow this tomato plant. This is a volunteer tomato plant. And it has little bitty tomatoes on it. Now, I don't know what kind of tomato that'll be, but there are tomatoes there. So that's it for my neighbor's garden with all of the trellises and the raised beds and the GreenStalks. Now, one of the things that I have changed in my garden, and this is a big thing, I had 2 trees removed, and so here's a picture, if I can get a picture in here, showing what the backyard looked like with these 2 massive trees that I had in the center of my backyard. And it provided tons of shade throughout the day, as well as shade to my neighbor's garden over here in the afternoon. But now that those trees are gone, let me show you. They are completely gone. The tree that was right here, there's nothing left. We had the stump removed as well. And then the one over there, the stump wasn't removed, but I'm going to show you in a minute. There was nothing left of the stump. Let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm now trying to grow grass in the center of my backyard. And I'm so glad that I had these trees taken out. Unfortunately, you can see there's nothing left to this tree. You know, one good storm would have brought this tree down because there's nothing left to the inside of where this tree was standing. It was in pretty bad shape. And the really big one in the center of the yard was in pretty bad shape too, but not quite as bad. But those trees would have taken out my she shed, my garage. It would have taken out quite a few things. So just before I get to the main garden, I'm going to show you this one other space, and then we'll head over to the main garden. In front of my she shed here, I have tomato plants that were pretty much destroyed by tree limbs falling on it as they were taking down those trees. There's some lettuce right here beside it. And then this was one of my pride and joys that's completely broken. I mean, it's in bad shape. I mean, it knocked the trellising system down, broke the leaves or the stems off of it and everything. Now, when that happened to this plant, y'all, I happened to just be inside. I was inside and I was watching them do the work on the trees, and I looked, this big limb fell and it hit the tomato plant, and I just put my head down. I just put my head down and I walked away. Later in the day, the guys that were working on the tree for me, and they know how I feel about my garden. They says, you know, I'm sorry, but we messed up. As soon as I dropped the limb, I saw the bucket truck come down. I saw the man run over and start trying to get the limbs off of my tomato plant. But I think the damage was already done. But I'm gonna work on it. I mean, I was able to harvest a whole bunch of green tomatoes. We went ahead and took those in the house, and there's still like 1.5 dozen or more tomatoes on here. Let me show you. So we got a red tomato over here hiding in the back. And then there are tons of little tomatoes on here. So this tomato plant still wants to grow. And we're going to make sure that it gets to grow and finish growing all of these green tomatoes, getting them to size so we can enjoy them. All right, we're going to move over to the main garden, but I'm going to start with hopefully an overhead view of the garden so you can kind of see how it's doing. So we'll start over here with the orchard, apple trees, metal raised beds, regular raised beds, all of my cattle panel trellising, green stalks in the front. I'm going to just stand in the middle here. There's corn growing back there. Brussels sprouts right here. And there's some little baby Brussels sprouts on there. They're still probably a month or so out. Corn's doing well back there. My rhubarb is coming back from where the ants had took over. Squash is beautiful. The flowers are not too bad either. Over here, this is some squash that's seen better days. They'll get pulled out probably this weekend. Some really pretty marigolds. Now, I picked 11 pounds of tomatoes yesterday, and there are some more here right today. But we will wait and pick them this weekend. Oh my goodness. Look at how big those are, y'all. Those are supposed to be cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes. And they're huge. They're going to look like that right there. They are called black strawberries, but they're huge. We have more onion over here. Some need to be harvested. Some's doing okay. Some of these tomatoes are massive, massive, massive. And I have well over 100 tomato plants in my garden. So we have lots and lots of tomatoes to come in and harvest and enjoy. And y'all look at this plant right here. There's so many different types of zinnias on here. You see that very thick petal, and then there's a thin petal there. The okra is finally getting ready to bloom. Now that's disgusting, y'all. I don't like okra. I don't like okra at all, but my mother does. Over here, I have cabbage. That's probably my biggest cabbage this year. That's ready to be harvested. Here's another one of those GreenStalk vertical planters, and I need to clean it up. There's some dead leaves on here, but this is my strawberry planter, 42 pockets of just strawberries. In the very front here, I have fire rings as well with strawberries in it. And you know, I'm starting to get a few blooms. I'm starting to. So hopefully they're going to start blooming and coming back in now that we're past the hottest part of that crazy weather that we've been having. Oh yes, and look, y'all, look, look, look. Grapes. Y'all see these grapes? I've been enjoying grapes every day now. They are delicious. They're small. They're very small, but they are very tasty, very tasty. So maybe next year they'll be even larger because they're bigger this year than they were last year. I had this small pot right here. I had extra peppers and I put them in this pot, y'all. I'll put a plant anywhere I can. But look how well it's doing. Look at that. Look at that massive pepper. Y'all look at that. That thing is amazing. And I just stuck it in this pot because I had it. And I put two in there. And there's some small ones up here on this one. I'm going to keep coming around. Here's another GreenStalk full of strawberries that needs to be taken care of. Still have just a few broccoli back here that I'm getting side shoots on. More tomatoes behind those. More tomatoes that need to be harvested. Growing with these tomatoes, I have one cucumber that volunteered in this space here, and I harvested it yesterday, and there are more cucumbers coming in on there. So free cucumbers. In this metal bed right here, I have in the very front here, if you can see it here, there are green beans coming up, which is going to be my second batch of green beans in my garden. There's cabbage right behind that. The second round of potatoes for this bed are starting to come up. And then there's some in here that's not coming up yet, so we're going to have to see what's going on with those. Cucumbers. In these first four here are bush cucumbers. Behind the bush cucumbers are some more green beans back there. I think I'm going to have to do something really soon with all of these carrots in the front of this bed here. In the very front, these are all carrots in the front. And I've been harvesting one or two here or there, but I think it's about time to take those out. In the back, yes, I planted watermelon. I don't think it's going to do anything. So right next to the watermelon, I went ahead and planted some cucumbers, because cucumbers I know will grow. And there's plenty of time to get them to grow. In this bed right here, I still have cool season crops. I have broccoli growing in here. And again, side shoots on all of the broccoli. I have cabbage in the front here. And as I've been harvesting cabbage, I've been replacing it with more cabbage. Now, it might not grow. And if it doesn't, that's okay. But I had the plants. And just behind those cool season crops, y'all, I have cantaloupes growing. And they are doing amazing. I'm starting to train them up the trellis there that we've installed for them. In this tomato plant right here, y'all, these are called opaca tomatoes. And this thing has so many tomatoes on it. I mean, I have never seen so many tomatoes in one spot on one plant. And they also had a hornworm on it too, y'all, and it scared me to death. But lots and lots of tomatoes. I'm going to have to say that my paste tomatoes are outpacing all of the other tomatoes this year. So the paste tomatoes are doing great. And y'all look at that. That's called a super sauce tomato. That thing's massive. I mean, it's only going to take one tomato and I can make a whole pint of tomato sauce out of it. Okay, joking, just a little bit. Just a few onion left over here. More carrots over here. And in the very back there, I have more melons. These are more cantaloupe growing back here. And I'm starting to see teeny little fruit on them. Few bags of potatoes over here as well. I think that one's about ready. Maybe one more week and we'll take care of that one. But a few potatoes over here. So the last 6 green stalks, and I did say I had 13, there's one full of nothing but strawberries. And I have been getting 1 or 2 off of there a week, and that's all. But I'm hoping to see many more blooms in the very near future. This planter right here has a variety of things. I have in the very top some carrots growing. I planted some beans, so there's some empty pockets that are finally growing some beans. It also has dwarf tomatoes in here. And when I say dwarf tomatoes, they're not always teeny little tomatoes like that. I mean, you can get some full-size tomatoes. You see that right there? That's called a bush steak. So you can get full-size tomatoes as dwarf tomatoes as well. I also planted some additional cucumbers back here. So this tower has everything in it. There's a huge tomato right there. That's a full-size tomato, full size. Moving on around, I have 2 pepper green stalks. This is my overwintered pepper green stalk, and it's absolutely amazing. Look at those. Look at that. Habanadas. Habanadas. Look at all of the peppers there. Habanadas. They're not hot, but they're going to taste like a habanero. And there are all kinds of bell peppers on here. There's a bell pepper. I think that's going to be a thunderbolt when it gets on bigger. There's some red ones there. I need to get those picked. There's another thunderbolt. Look how big that is. Look at that. Look at that. Another bell pepper there. So there's a variety of peppers on here. There's some Jimmy Nardellos here. But that's overwintered peppers with one or two new peppers put in. Now these peppers on this GreenStalk vertical planter were all started this season. And they are producing as well. The plants are smaller, but they are producing. I usually don't start getting peppers in my neck of the woods anyway until late July, honestly. And so I have been picking peppers off of here now for weeks. So we are in great shape this year for peppers. Moving on down, this is the second round on this GreenStalk vertical planter. So it started out with pansies. It now has petunias, and way down here, growing from seed in all of these other pockets are collard greens. And so I just planted them, I don't know, maybe a week ago, a little over a week ago, I planted the collard greens. And I transplanted this one from another one. So there are two transplants in here and ones I started from seed. I also, I'm going to show you everything, the good and the bad. In the very top, I transplanted lettuce. I have one that survived and only one that survived. And all of the rest of them died. But I have more to go in here now that the weather's cooling down. I will probably put seeds in so I'm not wasting the transplants. Now I saved this tower for last because this is the tower that I let roll off of the sidewalk. There's my sidewalk. I don't have any of my GreenStalks over there anymore. All of my GreenStalks are over here where they belong. And the only reason I didn't have them over here was because I was supposed to have my driveway done and it's still not done. And I believe the contractor has stolen my money, just to be honest with you. But I got to work to get my money back so I can get my driveway done because he's not here and he's not answering my calls. But anyway, this one fell off of my sidewalk. I cut most of them out. I replanted pockets with different things like beans, and I think I planted some of these pockets. What else did I plant in here? Cucumbers down there. I planted beans in this pocket here. So I just made sure every pocket had something in it. But what I wanted to show you is that everything's not a loss. Not everything. Like, you see that right there? There's a nice tomato. There's some nice ones right here. There's a nice tomato. And these are all of these big tomatoes that I'm showing you, these are all bush steak tomatoes. And honestly, they always do really well. They're from Burpees. They're called bush steak. They always do really, really well. But some of these, I didn't cut them out because they had some that are trying to grow. This one has end rot. That one's done. This one's dead. I just need to harvest the tomatoes off of that one. But it had some issues. Another issue that it has is that this is not a dwarf tomato. This is a black cherry, and I don't know how that black cherry got labeled wrong, but that is absolutely a black cherry, and it does not belong in here. That's a vining tomato, and this is the reason why I don't put vining tomatoes in here, is because they go everywhere. They're too big. So I like to use bush tomatoes or dwarf tomatoes in my GreenStalk vertical planters. Now, I've been talking for a long time, but I hope you got to see everything that's going on at Kim's Kozy Corner. There's some good things and there's some not so good things, but you got to see it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So thank you for joining me for this garden tour in July. So until next time, and I hope there will be a next time that you hang out with me, Kim, at Kim's Kozy Corner. Bye.